Das Mikrofon schon an?
Ja.
Jetzt ist es an, dann machen wir das gleich noch ein.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is looking great. My name is Dominique Hillemann from the Bertelsmann Foundation, and I'm glad to see so many of you here today. And tonight I'm going to be the moderator together with my colleague.
I would like to welcome everyone at our first trans-border dialogue, citizen dialogue that will be taking place in Polish and in English. On the first channel there's German, on the second channel there's English, at the third channel there's a Polish translation.
Have you got all your earphones? Czy wszyscy mają teraz? Mam nadzieję. To teraz może ja też się przedstawię. Ja jestem Gosia Bińczyk.
My name is Gosia Bińczyk. I work for the European Union, for the European Commission, and together with Bertelsmann Foundation, we will be moderating this evening. We both speak both languages. But is it really? I understand a little bit Polish, and I speak a little bit Polish, but it's probably better if I will use German.
Moderowała po polsku.
And I will continue to speak Polish because that's a trans-border dialogue.
I hope that all of you have seen the posters here, and it says democracy thrives on participation. And the fact that you want to participate is already illustrated by the fact that you're here today. And I think this is really important. And this location is really a very inviting place to participate. It is a former cargo train station. A lot of work was done here in the past, and today we will have a lively debate here. This is a great thing. There's a lot of things that we would like to do today. What are we going to do?
We have publics from 2 countries. We have amazing guests, and we have students that for the entire evening were preparing this discussion.
Our students are from Poland and Germany. There are 60 of them. And on the other hand of this hall, there is a nightclub. It looks like a nightclub, but we have done a lot of work there today. And of course, we also had loads of fun. And we did a lot of work on the future of the European Union, and the students coming from Germany and Poland, they're going to introduce their ideas to us and provide some impetus to our debate. And of course you can all participate.
Rozmowę. Może najpierw stwierdzimy, kto tutaj właściwie jest. Mają Państwo na swoich siedzeniach karteczki. Jedną zieloną i jedną czerwoną. No, taka różowawa raczej, powiedzmy. I chcemy za pomocą tych karteczek zadać parę pytań i zobaczyć, czy naprawdę Państwo nas rozumieją i wszystkie nasze pytania dochodzą tak, jak mają być.
Because everybody has their papers.
Oh, well, maybe. So let's have a look. So we've prepared a number of questions, and the first question is we would like to know where you're from.
Who came here from Poland? Please show us the green card. And who came from Germany?
So it's about 1/3, 2/3. So welcome to our Polish guests. A lot of you have come a long way. And we would also like to know who has already been here this afternoon and who shaped this informational market here. Please raise your green card. So here are those who did a lot of hard work, and what I would also like to know is there is a group of tourists from Lublin, 650 kilometers from here. Where are the people from Lublin? Wow, thank you so much for coming this long way.
Thank you very much for the amazing distance that you came to here.
Great, so we know who's here today, but we would also like to know, how are you feeling today? Weather is fine, but what do you think about the European Union? One question and two options to answer them. Are you happy with democracy in the European Union? So rather happy. I mean, not 100%, but are you rather happy or rather not so happy? If you are happy, green, and if you're skeptical, then please raise the red card. So many green cards that we can see, but some reds, but I think the majority was green, so a lot of people are quite happy with the European Union.
We also have questions and reasons for discussions, but that's why we are here today. That's why we also have additional questions. How well do you think you are informed about the European Union? Very good or not very good? Or not that good? Rather good with the green cards about the European affairs? Or rather not that well informed?
So, people seem to be quite well informed. Maybe you are attending these debates on a regular basis, or you are a regular newspaper reader, and those with a red card would like to know more about the European Union. But that's why we're here. We're having a debate we would like to discuss. It's not only us and the politicians coming here today, but this is what we're doing all together. So the first item on our agenda is to introduce those who made this debate possible. That's the chairman of the Bertelsmann Foundation, Mr. Art de Huys. Please come to the stage. And I would also like to ask to proceed to the stage, and that is Mr. Marek Brawka, the representative of the European Union in Warsaw, and Mr. Erich Kühne. Mr. de Huys, I would like to ask you the first question. It's supposed to be a small interview, which will be in German, because I'm talking to a German citizen here. Mr. de Huys, the Bertelsmann Foundation shows a great commitment to democracy in the European Union, and citizens' dialogue focus rather on local topics like road building. Why are we having a citizens' dialogue on the subject of the European Union? Because we need to do politics when it comes to the European Union, and of course, everything that's related to shaping policy needs to focus on the citizens, and you need to be close to the citizens and reach out to them. So we, as the Bertelsmann Foundation, we think all the European-related topics like the euro, security, this is something where you need to listen to the citizens. European policy needs to be closer to the European citizens.
Mr. Ambassador, the Europe and their citizens, this was always a very interesting topic. Why the European Commission today approached the topic differently than before? The European Union was architected by the people that had the memory of a bad past. But the European Union cannot only serve all the people with this memory. That's why we are approaching things differently today. We need to find a new sense of the European Union, to understand that some cases needs to be taken care of together, or will not be taken care of at all. The European Union can be a paradise on earth, but it can also change into a very bad place. The European Union is there for us so that we can live better. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
So he said Europe needs to reshape itself and needs to do some things differently. And of course, the European Union has already started to do so. There was a citizens' dialogue in Brussels a few weeks ago with hundreds of citizens coming from all over Europe. And so how did this idea actually come about? So the European Commission also wants to learn more, and we would like to explore new ways. And I'm really happy to see so many of you here. Marek Bafta and we have been pursuing this idea of having such a dialogue here close to the Polish-German border for quite a long time. Why are we having this dialogue here? Well, the future of the European Union can not only be shaped by the politicians, and this is what we've known as a European Commission for a long time, and this is why we started these citizens' dialogues. But this is not only about getting all the answers to future-related questions, but we would also like to formulate new questions, because citizens often put it in a different way, different from the way we are doing this at a European level. And this is why we had this meeting in Brussels with so many citizens from Europe, 4 citizens of each European country, in order to formulate these questions. And if you look online for EU citizens consultations on Google, you will find the website where you can answer 12 questions developed by citizens. And regarding the future of Europe, there's one last question to Mr. de Huys. Europe needs more citizens' dialogues. Okay, we got it, but what about cross-border dialogues? Is this really successful? What is a good citizens' dialogue? This is a very good question, because we know that we can go and vote every 4 years, and then we can elect our representative, and we could talk to this representative. Let's say you are a member of a political party, and then you can have this inner party dialogue. But this is unfortunately not common practice in Europe anymore. And between this time of elections, it is really important to work on subjects that are essential and to find out about the main arguments here. Well, maybe you think that you can only do this in one country and using one language, but this will lead us to the fact that Europe is made up of its diversity. There are so many people here from 2 countries, men and women, young and old, and this is representative of Europe, because Europe is based on diversity. Macron said yesterday the language of Europe is translation. This is quite interesting. So what we need to do is to understand each other. And if we don't make this effort, there won't be a Europe. We need to have a cross-border dialogue to understand each other and to respect each other. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you very much for those answers. Thank you very much to everybody.
Także w tym momencie
We will start, the dialogue with you, because that's the main reason why we're here.
So I think we're right in the middle of our discussion today. This became quite clear from our small interview, and that's why we would like to welcome the first Vice President of the Commission, Mr. Frans Timmermans.
We would like to invite Ms. Marshal of the Lubusz Voivodeship, Ms. Elżbieta Polak.
serdecznie witamy.
Und hier gleich um die Ecke, aber mit Europa sehr verbunden, den
And here we have the European Commission we have the Minister for Justice, Europe and Consumer Protection of the Brandenburg Regional Government, Stefan Ludwig.
So, und jetzt machen wir mal was ganz anderes.
And now let's do something completely different. We don't start our conversation by asking questions to our politicians, but we have 2 students here today who participated in the workshop in the afternoon, and they join us here on the stage and tell us what they talked about this afternoon and what they would like to know from Ms. Polak and our 2 gentlemen. And I welcome Ms. Askabachi from Viadrina University and Piotr Rodacki from Poznan. And here they are.
So, wunderbar. Reiht euch hier in die Reihe.
So please join us here. We discussed today what is it that holds us together in Europe. And we reflected on this concept, you developed some ideas, and you also have a question to our politicians.
Ladies and gentlemen, the European Union has a lot of principles like democracy, free speech, or our privacy. At the very beginning of the 21st century, with the global media and the social media, we need to protect our privacy. Our proposal is to create a team, a committee that will work on securing the data of the European citizens in Europe and abroad.
And about this topic, we came up with some ideas. The implementation could be that we would like to regulate the collection of data more. We also want to prevent data abuse by controlling foreign servers. And our question to policymakers is, how does the EU want to make sure that the data of EU citizens is protected on foreign servers? Good. So let's try to answer that. Mr. Timmermans, I would like to address this question to you. This is a very important point in time to talk about European values, and it's also a very important moment for data protection. The General Data Protection Regulation will come into force in a couple of days. What is the EU doing about this? What I really like most in the last few days is that Microsoft said, we're being obligated to do more for data protection in Europe, and we came to the conclusion that we'll do it globally. And this means that Europe now sets the standards, and everybody who wants to be active in Europe has to adhere to our standards. And they will launch the same concept globally, and that's a good thing. But when we look at what happens in the world, it's just not about data, it's about artificial intelligence, AI, and the development is so incredibly fast, it's almost impossible to grasp what it will mean for our societies. In some parts of the world, people don't worry about moral issues. Like in China, they just do business as usual, basically. And in the US, it's more of an economic issue. However, in Europe, it is a moral question. What does all of that mean for our citizens? How do we deal with that? And I would say our task as a society, and not just for us as policymakers, is to make sure that we start now and that we launch a debate about how we want to deal, for example, with artificial intelligence. How do we want to protect our values against certain technologies, robots, and so on? It goes much further than just taking care of data protection, but this is a good start.
Ms. Marshall, the data protection, one of our common European value. What's your opinion on this? Good evening. I'm really happy that my region is able to participate in such an important debate. And I would like to welcome the Voivodeship Lubelskie. And I hope that after this debate, our two regions will not be this is a very important topic. This is an important topic for every individual citizen because European values and protection of their rights and their dignity and their intellectual property in our community is very important. That's why this kind of debate and our conversation, like Mr. President just said, is very important because we need to consider the interests of every all 27 members of the European Union. We will probably not be able to give you the perfect solution here tonight. how should we protect the intellectual property, how should we secure the data from many different companies, because that's the only way we can protect intellectual property. Recently, I had in Zielona Góra, that's a city in my region, very good conference about patents, which is the intellectual property that suggested many different solutions that we could use when we apply it to the global scale. But we as Polish people, we are not only benefiting from the European Union, not only the funds that we can finance many different big infrastructure projects, but data protection is one of the reasons where we reap benefits when we talk about European Union.
And now a question to Mr. Ludwig, and I'm sure that he'll welcome all the Brandenburgers. But isn't the General Data Protection Regulation a good example that also shows it's not enough if individual federal states take action or EU member states take action, but instead the EU should take action? You know, I didn't want to welcome the Brandenburgers. I wanted to congratulate you on choosing this location. This is the perfect place because this is where Germany meets Poland. This is where people discuss European policy on a daily basis when they ride a tram, and this might be about childcare, it might be about the school system or about studying. So this was my congratulation to you. And then I think your question leads us to a reflection on the values we share in Europe. In Brandenburg, we have a special focus on social affairs within the European Union, because we believe that this is an issue that has to be taken care of by all of us together in Europe. And that's the only way of dealing with this. And this might refer to so-called click workers or the future of labor. It's nothing that states could regulate or control on their own. But of course, we also have balanced interests. We have to look at subsidiarity and when that principle is to be applied. And there are certain things that we can very well solve locally, for example, in a German federal state, and where we simply don't need European institutions to help us. But we've also joined a working group, and Mr. Timmermans has reported on it today. It's about how we share the work in Europe, and the general principle is that those who can do it best should handle the task. And data protection is an issue that has become so important politically that we believe all of us together in the EU have to take care of it. And we in Brandenburg agree. At the same time, we also see that the European Commission has sometimes different ideas. Certain data is stored in Europe for security reasons. And for a long time, we agreed that only individual authorities should have access to them and have those separately. And the Commission now believes that certain data should be interconnected. We are very skeptical about this in Brandenburg, also given our history. We believe there should be personal freedom, and we should believe that authorities have to make promises about how they use data, and that's a principle we don't want to give up, even in the face of terrorism. Thank you. And thank you to our students who have asked these questions, and thank you for participating in this afternoon's workshops. As we see, you addressed a very important topic, and that will remain on our agenda. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Yes, thank you also on my behalf.
Otworzyć dyskusję.
We would like to start the discussion, open discussion for every participant. That's why I will ask Dominic if you can join the participants and take some of your questions. I already see first hands that are being raised, and we will ask the questions to our panelists.
Okay, there are various questions on various issues. In our first round, we discussed what is it that holds us together in Europe. And of course, that debate is very much connected to values. And now we would like to ask around about what you think about it. And whenever you have a question about values in the EU, values that we share, then please raise your hand now for a question or a comment, and I'll come up to you with a microphone. I see a hand over there. Good evening, Wolfgang Barre. I'd be interested about what the Commission representative, Mr. Timmermans, thinks about the idea to give the European a right of initiative. You talked about democracy. Wouldn't that be a part of a democratic system? In Germany, for example, the government, the parliament, and the Bundesrat can submit legal initiatives. Why is that not possible for the EP? Because the European Union is not a national state and will never be. Because it's a supranational organization of national states and their citizens. And based on our treaties, it's only the Commission that has a right to initiate legislation. That's the official position. As I said, this is what is laid down in our treaties. But at the same time, it's clear that we have a constant dialogue on this with the European Parliament. And whenever the European Parliament has a topic they are strongly interested in, the Commission will listen to the Parliament and use that for an initiative. However, to make sure that the European Union can function structurally, we need a balance between the Council, where all the member states are represented, the European Parliament, where representatives elected by Europe's citizens are represented, and the European Commission that takes care of the balance between the two. This is the way the system is organized. There might be a better way of organizing the EU, but I haven't really heard of a better system. And if we have to change treaties, that's something that's been tried in the past. And I myself was part of the group who tried to achieve that. But I can tell you there is a lot of resistance from the member states. They don't really want to have it in a different way. Good, thank you. There is another question. What's your question? Yes, hello. I own a little press agency in Poland, and I applied in a competition for a nationwide TV license. And then, when I was told that I would not obtain the license, the reason they gave me was that I was not a Catholic. And I've asked repeatedly whether that was truly the reason. And I was told that the Media Council had taken that decision. Apparently in Zielona Góra, my regional capital, that was decided, and I actually studied here in Frankfurt at Viadrina University. But in Zielona Góra there was a meeting, and there was somebody who is a member of the Media Council and who told me, yes, but you know, you were not Catholic, and we wanted a Catholic TV station. And people, as I said, wanted a Catholic TV station. And my question is, what can I do so I won't be discriminated against again in the future? Thank you. Thank you. I think we get your point. Thank you for your question. Perhaps we can hand that to Ms. Pollack. I think you're getting ready for an answer.
Ms. Marsha, please. That's my citizen from Zielona Góra. We often talk together at different conferences in Zielona Góra, and he met me today also in Frankfurt. I actually think that could be an opinion of one member of the Commission that's not really according to the law. There's no law like this in Poland. The Constitution separates the church from the state. You can use the citizens initiatives. You can ask questions at those kind of conferences. You can appeal to every decision, and that's we are in this topic, This is exactly what we are talking about. What are the benefits of the European Union? That's the answer, because we have common values, common interests, and thanks to the European Union, we can talk about the cooperation, the harmonization, because the law is the same in every single member state. For example, there is one pharmacy agency that tests drugs and approves those drugs, and every single country doesn't need to do it by itself. The same with licenses for different exploration of minerals or TV station. The harmonization of law is a normal thing, and this is what I like. And I think the citizens of Poland and my region as well, because that's what connects us in Europe. That gives us the feeling of security and builds trust. Because thanks to this, the European Union gives us this security, and we like to know what's going to happen tomorrow and in the near future. And not only in Poland, also other citizens of the European Union. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. The stability, something that we all like.
Co nas łączy w Unii Europejskiej?
So, what are the common things?
And there's another question.
Good evening, Tadeusz Jarmowicz. I have a question to Mr. President. Does European Union tries to have a common position towards the new Chinese Silk Road?
Thank you. That was a very clear statement. And I give the floor to Mr. Timmermans. You know, the world is looking at Europe at this time to see how do we respond, how do we react to Trump, to his plans with Iran, and to what he does about trade. The world also looks at Europe when it comes to how we respond to Putin, his aggression and his behavior right in our neighborhood. And the world also looks at us when it comes to dealing with China. The only thing people want to see outside of Europe is whether Europe will speak with one voice or whether we will again pit one nation state against the other. I think this is a watershed for Europe. The world is changing very, very fast. And if we manage on all these questions to come up with a clear European stance, then we'll fulfill the role and the obligation that we've promised to our citizens. If we don't manage to do that because we focus on national preferences, if we don't want to speak as one, then China will play us all off against each other. There'll be a bilateral agreement here and there, and Trump wants the same. I am a big proponent of transatlantic relations. You see, I'm old, so I've seen a different type of Europe in the past. And I value very much our friendship with the United States. But now, for the first time, there is a president in Washington who believes that it is in the interest of the US that Europe is divided. I don't understand that. And I think it's temporary, and it will change. But it will not change if he realizes that he can be successful, if he can indeed divide us. Then our fate and the fate of our citizens will be decided elsewhere, be it in Washington or in Beijing or in Moscow. That means our unity is at stake. It will determine our fate, and I hope we'll be able to illustrate that to our citizens. And if we want to be successful in remaining united, we need Poland.
So we have another question
I hold the microphone. I have a question to Mr. Timmermans. The rule of law is a European value, yes. And you say that Poland infringed the rule of law and started to initiate sanctions against Poland because of its judicial reform. But how would you like to implement these sanctions? Because I think the Polish population is not really in favor of the European Union. They do not want to be ruled by an external force. And we would like to be independent and self-determined, and this is the background of the judicial reform. But of course we cannot accept the reform as such. I agree with you, but how would you like to implement these sanctions? Thank you very much for this very detailed question. I would like to start by this question of sovereignty. In the past, when Germany was very strong, Poland was situated 300 kilometers in the east, and when Russia was very strong, Poland was rather situated in the western part, and when both of them were strong, Poland didn't really exist. But since the end of the Cold War, Polish sovereignty has become stronger than ever before, because no one will ever dare questioning the borders of Poland. The Polish citizens are freer than ever, freer than they've ever been in Polish history. And this is not only because of Solidarność, because if it hadn't been for Solidarność, we wouldn't be here today, but it's also due to the fact that Poland has become a member of the European Union and NATO. So it's not true that the European Union took away freedom from Poland. On the other hand, it gave more freedom to Poland and more prosperity. And now I would like to answer your specific question. I'm firmly convinced that our European Union will only be able to survive if the rule of law can be maintained. This is the only way. And why is that? Because our very embarrassing history has told us, thinking of the Nazi regime or communist regimes, if there are no independent judges and their sentence, their decisions depend on party policy, then citizens will suffer. And then there will be no single market, no internal market. And that is why EU legislation always needs to be transposed into national law, and we need independent judges to take a decision here. And what can we do about Poland? Together with the Polish government, we have had a very complicated debate because there's a serious disagreement. But the European way to solve this problem is not having sanctions, but having a dialogue. And if this dialogue will not really help us, then of course we need to resort to sanctions. But I'm firmly convinced that once the Polish government has realized that the European Commission is determined, and all European member states are determined that Poland cannot solve the problem this way and needs to find a different way, then we will be able to change Poland's mind. So we have already been on the right track, but now we need to convince the Polish government that that the judiciary needs to be independent in Poland.
Praworządność.
The rule of law, as one of our common European values that we have today, let's discuss in which direction the European Union should evolve. in which sectors should it be more involved, and in which a little bit less. We also have an opinions of different students. We have two.
We have two students, one from Lublin and one from Berlin, and these two students will tell us what they've worked on this afternoon. So please come to the stage. Who would like to start?
I would like to welcome everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. First Vice President, Mr. Marshall, Mr. Minister, we would like to ask the question how the European Union should evolve, and for the future of the European Union, the social justice for every citizen in Europe is very important. Our project that we started, this is a project between the countries, member states and citizens that concerns equality. The differences is too big at the moment. That's why we would like to suggest building a more equality, more equal European Union, and building a fund for unemployment people.
So this is a question to the panelists here. In order to achieve this aim of this common unemployment fund, we would like to have all employees to make a contribution to this fund, and the benefits that actually paid depend on the situation in the country, and we would like to have training courses that are for free for the people in Europe. We think that we can achieve a Europe that is more resistant to crisis and that shows more solidarity. So my question to the Vice President, to the Minister and the Marshal is, what can we do in order to support this pillar of justice in Europe, and what do you do about right-wing forces in Europe? Mr. Vice President, I would like you to answer this question first, or maybe Minister Ludwig, who would like to start? So maybe I can start? That's great, yeah. Social Europe is something that is very dear to me. I'm quite happy that my feeling was correct, that this subject is getting ever more important, especially young people. And I think if we had more social equality in Europe, we would have fewer right-wing forces in Europe, because this is something to do with social equality, because so if we're really serious in Europe about keeping up with the times, then we should really pay attention to the fact that everyone will have added value from Europe. This added value can be security, social justice, and this will not make Europe weaker, but it will make Europe more stronger. And how can we do that? All of us have to contribute. So this is not something that only politicians that were elected can do that. Of course, they have to do their fair share, but all of us can contribute. So I'm quite happy to see that the European Union and that the European Commission has realized that there is room for improvement and that there are some subjects we need to shed more light on. And I'm also happy to see so many students dealing with this topic, and I'm also very grateful for your specific proposals. And I've heard about this suggestion before, and I think we should have more debates on that proposal. So, for example, we can stick to national systems, but having an overall insurance So I think the fact that we put a stronger focus on that will help us to have a stronger social pillar. And if the European Union wants to become stronger, they need to deal with this topic, especially when it comes to labor legislation. And there are also other social laws that can only be solved at an EU level. I think it's really great that you have touched upon this topic, and I absolutely agree with you. If we look on the structure of a social market economy, there are two terms that matter: care and share. Care, share, and distribute. And what we can see now is that there was the crisis in 2008, but even afterwards it became quite clear that we're not really good at sharing, at distributing. There are some people that are among the winners, but there are some people that haven't realized that we've overcome this crisis, and there are a lot of people losing out. And this is really hard for society to deal with. We have more and more populism, and many people think, well, there's no added value for me in this society. Europe is not working out. And we're right in the middle of this industrial revolution, and the idea of work, of labor, will change due to artificial intelligence. So, of course, my work will be different from my parents' work, for example. This will all change, and everyone needs to benefit. So we need to redistribute our work and our prosperity. And if we don't manage to do that, we will have more and more populism. And we have seen that before, and unfortunately, this is a tendency that we can observe now. But if we solve this social issue, then we will be able to find a general solution. We have underestimated this social question, and now we need to take specific action. You've mentioned young people in Europe, and the biggest success of Europe has always been Erasmus. But this was only for students, the elite, so to speak. Now we need Erasmus Plus in order to give the opportunity to all students to travel in Europe, to gain experience, because tomorrow's economy will be based on creativity and not on productivity. And creativity will only be possible if there is exchange, a lot of exchange between people. And all of our young people need to be able to benefit from that, not only students. And that's why I completely agree and support your proposal.
I would like to add to this question, because it's also a very important idea in our development strategy in our region. That's what we discussed in Zielona Góra during the public debates. One of the common values of the European Union, like democracy, free speech, and rule of law, we also included equality and solidarity, but I understand it a little bit differently. The equality and solidarity is as access to the goods and to partnership, and not give-outs. This other subsidies need to be we had a period when we mostly did infrastructure works. I work in our region for 10 years, and this direction helped us to double the GDP. The average salary in my region was monthly 2,200 zloty. Right now it's 400 zloty, so it's almost doubled. The small companies, the number of small companies also Yeah, there are almost 12,000 small companies in my region. So we basically wanted to support better standard of living. So when we ask young people today, what European Union gives you, do you feel like a citizen of Europe? My sons, that are the citizens of free Poland, they were born in free Poland. Mom, they always say, Mom, freedom means I can choose the university in Europe, I can travel, I can see, I can watch what other people are doing, and I can without complexes, with no feeling of being lower, can actually compete with other people. So young Polish people are very. So this direction of the cohesion policy is very important, especially for young people. Erasmus is not the only solution, but Erasmus Plus for everybody, because we will give this European to the young people, and hopefully in a better state than today. But also we have other problems that we need to take care of, like like the population in Europe getting older, the defense. So this is the problems that we need to take care of. But this solidarity in those social projects should be smart. Should be smart, and it should include the citizens. I would also like to add just one sentence. I know I should be finishing, but referring to the judiciary and rule of law in Poland, Polish citizens need EU support for the development of non-governmental sector in Poland, and we need this. We need to know that we are in the right.
Budujemy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Budujemy Unię Europejską dla następnej generacji.
We build the European Union for the next generation. Let's open the discussion and answer the question how the growth of European Union should look in the future, where we should make more and when less.
Yeah,
what we are doing here is we're having a debate here on the panel, and we've seen so many people raising their hand who would like to share their ideas, and what we would like today now is to have a discussion for 3 to 4 minutes, and please discuss on the topics: where do we need more Europe and where do we need less Europe? What should be the developments in Europe? And our politicians over here will take part in these little discussions, and then we will have a general debate afterwards. I would like to ask the first row to turn around to speak to the second row, the third row with the fourth row, and please try to find someone who can have a little discussion of 3 minutes. So please discuss the question where we need more Europe and where we need less Europe.
We would like to ask to form groups of 3 to 4 people so that we can discuss.
Gehen wir einmal hier rüber.
Tutaj.
So, gehen wir einmal hierher.
So. Pani Polak ma swoje. So, ihr kommt vielleicht hier vorne mit.
Ja. No.
Möchten Sie hier vielleicht mitdiskutieren?
Aha.
If you want to join with this.
Sure.
Drogie panie, czy możemy zaprosić pana wiceprezydenta do nas?
Ja.
Wy jesteście...
Dzień dobry, Edward Wierzyński, prezes Ruskiego Stowarzyszenia Sołtysów. Edward Wierzyński, prezes Ruskiego Stowarzyszenia Sołtysów.
Aber wir müssen, nie możemy teraz...
Aha, myślałem, że już można pytania zadawać.
Nie, to nie są teraz pytania. Teraz jesteśmy...
Okay, now that's not the place for the questions, not the moment.
Pani mówi, że nie można teraz, ale...
seems to be an interview.
Sehr konkrete Frage zum Budget, wie viel die Agrarwirtschaft verlieren wird. Ich würde sagen, wir machen das allgemein zu dem Thema der Entwicklung. Przepraszam. Nasza runda teraz nie chodzi o konkretne pytania w Państwa sprawie, tylko o dyskusję, w którym kierunku Unia Europejska ma się rozwinąć.
Aber ich kann das beantworten, weil es über Polen geht und Landwirtschaft. Polen wird noch immer sehr stark unterstützt werden. Und wir haben auch dafür gesorgt, wir werden dafür sorgen in unseren Vorschlägen, dass kein Mitgliedstaat viel verliert. Es gibt auch ein Netz, um das zu verhindern. Aber die Landwirtschaft in Polen wird sich weiterentwickeln und wir werden das weiter unterstützen.
Pan pierwszy przewodniczący mówi nam, że Polska, szczególnie polska gospodarka rolna nie straci. Można to powiedzieć już teraz, że w dalszym ciągu Unia Europejska będzie dodawała do rozwoju, szczególnie w dziedzinie rolnej. I taką rolę widzimy w dalszym ciągu Unii Europejskiej.
W niektórych naszych mediach poszła taka informacja, że rolnicy unijni, starej Unii stracą 5%, natomiast Polska, ci co później weszli, 1%. Czy to jest
Wir haben eine Missinformation in den polnischen Medien, dass manche mehr verlieren werden als andere und Polen
Aber
besonders.
das ist vielmehr bei den Strukturfonds, nicht bei der Landwirtschaft. Bei den Strukturfonds, die Regionen, die jetzt sehr erfolgreich sind und angewachsen sind an das europäische Niveau, die werden natürlich etwas weniger bekommen in der Erfolgsregelung. Aber das ist nicht bezüglich auf die Landwirtschaft.
Nie, bardzo dziękuję. Pytam się z drugiej strony.
które w ogóle się rozwijały w ostatnim czasie, one naturalnie będą otrzymać troszeczkę mniej pieniędzy z tego tytułu, że szybciej się rozwijały i doszło do tego europejskiego poziomu. Natomiast te regiony, które bardziej potrzebują wsparcia, no dalej bardziej finansowo. Czy jakby jest to kwestia tego, jak bardzo regiony rozwijają się ten moment.
Nie.
Ich habe eine Frage, ich wollte
Pan już był, prosimy, przepraszam bardzo. Już mieliśmy.
meine Sache irgendwie durchkämpfen wollte und das ging nicht. Dieser Justizsystem in Polen ist irgendwie so bürokratisch. Das war eine Anzeige, die Zahl der Berechtigten nur auf Katholiker begrenzt. Ich konnte das nicht in administrativen Gericht durchkämpfen, weil das war nicht eine administrative Entscheidung, sondern nur eine Anzeige in einer Presse. Und was zu machen? Wer verantwortlich ist dafür?
Proszę pana, bardzo dziękujemy w tym momencie.
Schicken Sie das bitte an unsere Vertretung in Warschau mit Dokumenten, dass wir wissen, was da dort geschehen ist. Dann kann ich mal sehen, ob ich etwas tun kann. Ich kann nichts versprechen, aber wenn die das an uns schicken, dann kann ich versuchen, was zu tun. Ja?
Okay. An der Stelle werden wir vielleicht unsere Runde.
So perhaps we can stop here. The 3 minutes are over. Thank you very much for the discussion.
Oh, darf ich einmal... Darf ich...
And may I please ask you to calm down again and also conclude your discussions. Ms. Pollack, Mr. Timmermans and Mr. Ludwig, would you please come back here onto the stage?
An dieser Stelle.
So please, everybody who was on this stage before, would you please come back?
Yeah, on stage. Miss Marshall, please come on stage.
Ja, das ist schwierig. Gut, wir warten noch auf Frau Pollack.
Okay, we just waited for Ms. Pollack and Mr. Timmermans to return.
Während die Herrschaften hier in der Mitte noch diskutieren.
And while some people still continue their discussion, please put your headphones back on.
Wenn Sie trochę lepiej słuchawkami, tak?
Please use your headphones again.
Gut. Wunderbar. Während sich das
Great. So now while we calm down, I've just learned to start a discussion like this and send the politicians down to the floor. It's not a problem, but it seems to be very difficult to get them back here on the stage. But let's call this creative chaos. And I believe that we've come up with a lot of different ideas, and perhaps I can briefly check. What did you discuss in your little group? Would you like to share that with us?
Pani na sercu.
We were talking about the older people, that there is no protection for the older people. And the second topic was about data protection. I personally sent a crossroad to the magazine, and I didn't give them permission to use my data. And then after all, I started to receive a lot of commercials and papers, and this was not okay, because I didn't give them any permission to use my data. Thank you very much.
Are there any other topics?
We spoke about the topic that students talked before, about the equality and solidarity that they need to share with poor people. And the union that becomes richer and richer should start sharing this wealth before they start asking for it, because those nationalism and those fringe movements gain their strength because we do not share the wealth enough. For example, in Italy, the Five-Star Movement and La Liga, they just gain powers. That's the future problem of the European Union. And it's even more important than the rule of law in Poland.
May I now comment on this, because this was a very important question. Italy. You know, it might be a bit embarrassing if I say this, but then I also want to be honest. The Italians are very disappointed of the traditional political elite, because not much has changed for the better. There isn't the dynamic development they would like to see. But the Italians are even much more disappointed by the fact that Europe did not help them when they were flooded by refugees. They felt left to their own devices. They felt alone. And this had an enormous impact on the opinions of the Italian population. And this whole question of migration can only be solved by all Europeans together. It can't be solved by putting up fences or walls. It can only be dealt with if we help Africa to develop. It can only be solved if we have better border protection for Europe. It can only be solved if we help to end wars. And no country should say, oh, do that without me. The same when there are social problems. If there are countries that say, oh, you fix that without me. Security problems? You can take care of that. If everybody does that, the European Union will fall apart. So either we are a European Union based on solidarity, or we aren't a union.
Herr erster Vizepräsident, wenn ich...
Vice President, if I may ask you, you had this very interesting discussion here in the middle of the room. What did you learn from that? What is it that people are concerned about? What I feel is that those citizens I've spoken to here have a need for information. They want to know, is it true that there will be less money for agriculture in Europe? Is it true that you can't do anything about Article 7? And what I like about this is that people use my very presence here to talk to me and to exchange information instead of telling me, oh, you need to do that, you must do that. And this is the only way of how we can leave this difficult situation. We have to exchange ideas and also concerns. It's the only way to make headway. And let me say, dziękuję for your questions. And I assure you that we will answer to your questions, including for agriculture.
And yeah, we invite you to come more often. When we talk about equality and solidarity, we need to underline that the future expectations in 2020, it's the most important thing is the support of the weaker citizens, because we're getting older in Europe. That's what the lady here told us. So we need to support. So we also need to support handicapped people, and that's our appeal to Warsaw.
Minister, what did you learn in your discussion with our citizens? We talk mostly about education and about why Europe doesn't work on education and all of that in the face of nationalist tendencies in different states. And one question is, why did the European Union not really deal with this? Well, the reason is that the member states didn't want it. Everything that happens in Brussels is very rational, let's say. And things don't happen unexpectedly, but they're very often based on vested interests. And so the explanation why Europe hasn't looked into this topic in the past is that the member states did not want it. But thank you for sharing this concern with me, because it tells me that all of us are interested in the educational opportunities our young generation has. What can they learn? Do they have access to education? What type of textbooks are they shown? What do the textbooks say about Europe? It's important to talk about this and do so freely and frankly. That's a value in itself. But we also have to make sure that nationalist ideas don't exist in textbooks. And on this type of education, we must not only start with students, but much earlier. We have to explain to children and young people what Europe has in store for them, what's the benefit of Europe. Yes, sorry, I'm standing over here now, and there was a very lively discussion.
So it was the topic of your discussion. It was very interesting, but I'm missing one topic. I'm really happy that Mr. President and Mr. Minister and Ms. Marshall came here and gave us their very valuable time and gave us very good answers that we wanted to get some more additional information. That's why we should all thank them together by applause.
You have come here from so far away. What do you say, 650 kilometers from Lublin? So you've come all this way, and now I've got something to offer to you. If you've already covered 600 kilometers, and if you just were to continue for another 700 kilometers, you might make it to Brussels. And I'll be happy to invite you. So you come and visit me at the Commission, and then we could continue our discussion. That sounds great. It's actually around 820 kilometers from here. So I hope you've written everything down so that it doesn't get forgotten. And now we would like to move on to our third topic. How can each and every one of us make a contribution to Europe's future? What do we do to shape Europe's future? On that, we have again 2 questions from our students. Dominic, will you introduce them? Yes. we would like to welcome Lara Ackermann from Cottbus and Filip Wilwowicz from Poznan. Please join me over here. Great. Now, of course, this is a very complex issue, this question of how can I contribute and help to shape Europe. As good citizens, that's our task, of course. What is most important to you?
Okay. I don't have the translation. So
Yeah, that's okay. So just go ahead.
Okay. Mówiąc o
When we talk about problems of the citizens of the European Union, we need to talk about that the main problem in Poland and other countries is the problem of voting. Why? Because a lot of people don't feel that they are represented in European Union, and they don't feel like European Union does something for their needs. So the European Union, to solve this problem, we need to show them what are the benefits, what they are actually getting for being a member of the European Union on the national level and the local level. We need local initiatives to explain to the citizens how the European Union is helping them in every single day.
Ja, also wir haben uns als Vorschlag überlegt.
So we thought it might be a good idea to send experts to communities and municipalities and to raise awareness among young people and the older generation and explain to them what kind of impact the EU has on their everyday life, like road building, mobility, employment, food and other standards, and so that they have the opportunity to ask questions in order to promote such a dialogue as today's, and then people will be more motivated to go and vote and to have an impact and influence elections. So our question is, what do you think? What is the problem? Why do we have such a low turnout usually whenever there are elections to the European Parliament? Is it due to the institutions, or maybe it is because of the people that do not want to vote? So maybe Mr. Timmermans can answer the question, but I guess everyone will have an answer here. I would be quite surprised. I think we will have a much higher turnout next time in 2019, because now people realize that this is about really important things: security, the economy, social affairs, education. So why do we have such a low turnout? Well, the reason is the European Parliament still seems quite far away, a very remote parliament for many people. So what do we need to do? This is not the fault of the European Parliament, because all the members of Parliament are very hard-working people, and 24/7 they do their best in order to improve the European Union. Well, Polish people know how their parliament works, the Germans how their own parliament works, the Dutch know how their own parliaments work, and this should be the representatives of the European Union. National parliaments need to take more responsibility to talk about Europe and to convey the European idea. It's not the right thing always to tell them, well, the bad things, they are created at the European level and we just do the good things. I don't want to defend everything we do at a European level. Sometimes we do too much and sometimes too little, and of course we need to take corrective action here, but this is not about getting frustrated about the European Union. It's not about throwing away the European Union. It's about improving the European Union. Let's look at the situation in the European member states, not only in the south or the north. There are patriots and there are nationalists. A patriot is someone who's proud of his or her country, would like to show their own country and is curious, what about other countries? And a nationalist has fear, and a nationalist needs an enemy, and the enemy is Brussels or their neighbors. But this is not a very productive thing to do. We're not able to progress as a society. We are all different. And everyone can add value in Europe, but we cannot turn a blind eye to the developments in the European Union. We shouldn't be scared of our neighbors, because this is so unnecessary. What a miracle we have Poles and Germans here talking to each other, and the most normal thing to do. I was a soldier in the past, and the enemy lived here. This is what I was told. This was my Europe before 1989. You have never got to know this because you were born in a free country, in a free Europe. But this is not something that goes without saying, something natural. We need people that are passionate about it. It's not about the nationalists that like to throw away the rest of the world. We need more people that are passionate about Europe, who say, well, I'm a Pole, I'm a German, but I'm also a European Union, and I'm fighting for the European Union and our shared future.
Pani marszałek, poproszę.
Ms. Marshall, please. I would like to add that it's not bad, Mr. Vice President. We just need to be a little bit more patient. We are only in European Union for 14 years, and we already have our president of the Council. Polish people are very active in European Parliament and the initiatives, and we're using the instruments. As you can see today, the number of participants is very high. We want to take part in citizens' dialogue. We use the initiatives. We send different ideas to Brussels. And as the young students already said, we also need to participate in elections way more than we do today. And I would like to also underline the role of the non-governmental organizations. Last year in Kostrzyn, which is not far away from here, at one of the most beautiful festivals of the world, which is called Woodstock, we made a board with the title, "We are the citizens of Europe." And hundreds of people signed this board. That's how I understand the meaning of the European citizenry, of strengthening the feeling of European citizenship. We also made a board after 14 years of Poland in the European Union with informations and benefits of Poland being member of the European Union. So this actually motivates people to understand what are the benefits. So we try to meet with different citizens at different barbecues, and in one district in Poland we had more than 90% support for joining the European Union, which was the highest support in Poland.
Ale wszyscy wiemy, że wybory do Parlamentu Europejskiego to nie.
We know that European elections is not only like at Facebook or signatures. That's why I would like to ask Mr. Ludwig.
You've just heard. Well, the election to the European Parliament means going to a school building or a kindergarten or wherever you need to go and vote. So what can we do in order to increase voters' turnout? I think Mr. Timmermans has already mentioned parts of the solution. Here in Germany, we need to stop doing that, saying, well, we have made an achievement, but the problem is Brussels, and they keep inventing problems, and we need to stop that, because sometimes we are surprised about certain European standards, for example, about the vacuum cleaner and the strange standards that need to be applied, and there are always conflicting interests. Let's say whenever there's always a certain interest of certain member states or maybe certain companies, and usually this is, however, quite thought through. So, of course, this is something to communicate, but we should also encourage our citizens to consider the European Union to be something that is in their interest. I think there will be another 500 citizens dialogue, so there will be experts sent to a number of cities and towns in Europe, and the regional governments and the national governments will be represented. Sometimes they are smaller. Today we have a very big event here, and I'm very happy that we can do that, even having these cross-border dialogues. We are quite active on site, and it's not only about explaining things. We also need to raise awareness and show that Europe is able to listen, because we need to focus on social affairs, and there's more interest in social affairs. It's not only students that are interested in that, and we need to show them that Europe is listening to them and that Europe is doing something about it. Sometimes in Germany we say, well, our government can't do that, but we can start and try and look out for partners. For example, when it comes to equal education opportunities in Europe, of course, we need to address and reach out to national and regional governments and try to have more Europe at our schools and curricula. And this is a clear sign that we need to send a clear message, and then we will have a higher turnout even in Brandenburg. And here we have some passionate pleas and calls for Europe, and we need more citizens' participation. So this is the mixture that we need in order to reach out to the citizens in Europe, having more dialogues. Yes, I think this is part of the solution. This is also something to do with our national and regional policies. Because we see a generation, like my children, that are very idealistic, not ideological. So how can we make a contribution here? We want their idealism to be turned into action, to put into practice, to do something together. There is a big majority in most of the member states that are pro-European, but they are quite silent. But what we keep listening to is the voice of the anti-Europeans, the nationalists. So we need to make ourselves heard in all of the member states. This will be to the benefit of the European Union. We will be much better off if we listen to these silent voices, because it doesn't mean that you're right just because you're louder.
Dominic, thank you very much. It's getting late. It's almost 9 o'clock. Thank you to the students for your input. Dominic, please let us hear last 2 questions from the public, and we will finish our discussion with it.
Well, I think we've already talked to you. We collect 2 or 3 questions, and then our panelists will answer to these last questions.
Nico, thank you for this opportunity. I have a question to Mr. President. I would like to ask you about the future of the Eurozone. We know we have a Greece crisis, the debt crisis, and the situation of the European economies is not that great, because we still have the countries are still very indebted when compared to the GDP. So what the European Union can do to repair this situation?
So we will collect more questions right over here, and then our panelists can answer. So
good evening. My name is Lucian Chardebo. I come from Silesia. I'm a friseur in Poland, and I'm a European. Not to make it long, a very short sentence, except to my friends in Schlesien. Oh, this is a historic. This is a passage from old novel. It basically says that when we sign treaties with the European family, the other member states should come and help in different situations so that there is no blood on the streets. So just one more sentence. Thank you very much that I'm here tonight. I'm smiling to Mr. Timmermans, and I know he's smiling at me. Hopefully he will also allow me to take a picture with him.
Darf ich jetzt?
May I? I'm quite optimistic, actually, when it comes to the currency union. I know that we need to strengthen our currency union, but the European economy is quite well off. We have very little unemployment. It's the lowest figure since 2008, and of course growth is not as good as it could be, but what we need to do within the Eurozone is strengthening the Euro Union, and the banking unit also needs to be completed. This is something that we need to work on, and I also hope that Poland will become a member of our currency union. This would be to the benefit of Poland and to the benefit of the European Union. So I'm optimistic. But the question is, let's say there's another crisis. Are we able to stick to that? Do we have enough trust and confidence in our European fellow citizens? This is the big question that we need to answer. And to answer your question, you need to know I come from Helen, a very small town in the southern part of the Netherlands. And for more than 20 years, we have seen a number of Poles coming to this part of the Netherlands. Most of them are miners. And in Limburg, which is the region where I live in, and they say Frans Timmermans from Helen, and when there is an article about me in the national newspaper, they say Frans Timmermans from Limburg, and the newspapers in Brussels, they say the Dutch Frans Timmermans, and when I gave an interview to CNN, they say the European Frans Timmermans. So Helen, Limburg, the Netherlands, Europe, this is all me, and there are no contradictions. It's always the same person, and this applies to all of us, and this is something that we need to understand. This is not a contradiction. This is the gift of Europe, the diversity. The gift of the European Union is that we understand each other, speaking two different languages, and everyone agrees. This is what we need to protect, and it shouldn't be something we're scared of. And if we will be able to adhere these values, everything will be fine. And thank you for smiling, Minister Ludwig. Maybe you have a few last words on our first cross-border citizens dialogue, and then the lady to my right. Yes, this is what happens at home too. It's always the lady speaking at last. So this was a great night, a great event, and we have a very diverse audience here speaking many different languages, and this worked out really fine. because the German-Polish treaty has existed for only 25 years, and it's great that we have this partnership. And secondly, the economic development within the European Union, well, this is not something that happened by coincidence. This is based on the treaties. This is an economic union. This is an eternal market. But the market cannot solve the European questions. So we need to have more equality, an equal distribution, and we need to strengthen our social pillar in Europe. So maybe there are people that cannot be creative or that have problems with their family, and they need to be secured by the social net. And we need to inspire everyone in Europe. Everyone can do so. And let's say you hear some nonsense about the European Union, then it's up to you to tell other people that this is not possible, and that you should try to convince other people. And I will try to do that and to spearhead this movement.
Ms. Marshall, please let us hear you for the last time. Let me summarize at the end. Speaking shortly, I would like to underline that European Union is a community of nations, different nations. The United States of different continents. It's like our region, the Western region, Lubush region. People came to our region from all over the world, and for the last 70 years, we learned to live in diversity and respect for other people. So for us, the biggest value is peace, and we should take care of it, and for the other values of the European Union, which is democracy, equality, freedom, and solidarity. Mr. President, when we just came here today, asked me discreetly if I'm not afraid to discuss with me here in public. I said, no, I like those kind of challenges. And I have to admit the level was high. Thank you.
Ich hätte noch eine Frage.
Ja, ich sag gleich was. Ja, wunderbar.
That's great, Vice President. This pilot project of a cross-border citizens dialogue, are we going to continue with that? Yes, definitely. I would like to have that in my region too. I live 2 kilometers away from the German border and 12 kilometers away from the Belgian border. So I would love to have something like that in my region. But I have one more question. One thing is for sure: the Netherlands will not become a world champion. But you all have your cards. Do you think that Germany is becoming world champion? Then green. And if you think that Poland is becoming the world champion, then please show your pink card. Wow. So I hope that Milik is in a good condition in summertime.
Bardzo dziękujemy. Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much to our participants at the stage, and we also like to warmly welcome the audience for the questions, for taking part in our dialogue.
Das Statement von Herrn Timmermans hat noch mal gezeigt.
Mr. Timmermans' comment has shown very well what a lively debate we had here. There were a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we only had 90 minutes, but I think we used them well. And before you all leave, I would like to present an invitation to you, an offer, and I have 2 requests. The invitation is there are still beverages and food, so please help yourself. And my offer is please look at the the information boards, at the posters, to see what we've worked on this afternoon, because I think this is quite impressive. And I have two requests. Maybe there is a sheet of paper either on your chair or under your chair, because we would like to know what you think about today's event. Have you enjoyed today's event? What about the organization? Maybe there's something we can improve. Please let us know, and just leave the sheet on your chair. We're going to collect them later on. Have a safe trip home. See you soon. Thank you very much.
Ja.